Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very happy to introduce my today's guest, Mr. Charpentier, who is an American novelist. And also Mr. Charpentier used to come to Ukraine and to Odessa in particular on different occasions. So Mr. Charpentier knows Ukraine very well, and obviously it is very important that Mr. Charpentier agrees on a weekly basis to participate in our show, because he can provide a Western perspective on the situation in Ukraine and on the war between Ukraine and Russia, which started 1 month ago when Russia launched its aggression. Good evening, Mr. Charpentier. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks again for having me.
Mr. Charpentier, I'm sure that you have seen these heartbreaking pictures which come from Ukraine, from Instagram, from other social networks. I see them in the major American newspapers, how Russia is sheltering bombs over Ukraine, how many people died, passed away, how many kids now became orphans, etc. You saw the square, you saw these pictures.
Yes, of course.
Do you think that now, after so many pictures were published in a Western world, Western people in their majority, they understand that this war is very close to them, and this is not a private question of Ukraine, but this is the question of, let's say, Western world. This is a question which not only Ukraine, but European Union, United States have to face. That, you know, we have a saying in Russian and in Ukrainian that there are no, there are no, let's say, other kids. All kids are kids, you know. So Western people, do they understand that these kids who are suffering from Russian aggression, basically they are their kids as well?
Well, recently, Joe Biden visited some refugees, and he had said that, one of the little girls reminded him of his, one of his grandchildren, the kids reminded him of his grandchildren. And, I think that having lived in Ukraine too, it really makes me feel and think of the war in a very different way, because I had never lived in a country that, was at war. So I think that when, I think that the way that Zelensky from the start has publicized the war, and I think the way that the media has covered the war, I think it's been extremely effective, and I think that people are definitely able to relate. People are able to relate to it, to Ukrainians, I think, because of the way that the narrative is being projected. And, I think that we're definitely, Ukraine and America and the West the rest of the West is definitely winning the war, the media war. The information, the way that the information too is projected onto the world. And I think that Putin is definitely losing, on both fronts. On that front, and he's unable to take a lot of cities in Ukraine too, right? And not as quickly as he thought he would. So, and I think that that's playing itself out in the media as well. And I think it's really difficult to really know how things really are, in Ukraine, or, for us. And then I think it's difficult for Ukrainians who are living in Ukraine to really see the way things are projected here, but I think that I think that we have control of the narrative, and I don't think that will change. And I think that the Ukrainian, the Russian invasion will stay in the news for a long time. During our last interview, I wasn't so sure, because I started to see it a little less of it in the news, But I think that again, I think that Zelensky's doing an excellent job in keeping it in the media, and
Mr. Charpentier, you just mentioned President Biden's trip to Poland. And I also was very fascinated when I saw the speaks when President Biden, he shared the pizza with the soldiers. He sat between the soldiers. So basically, he shared the meal with them. And, at this moment when I saw this picture, obviously this picture is not about pizza. This picture is about the attitude. This picture is about attitude between the top politician and the let's say regular army, regular soldiers. And I think this picture actually reveals the principle of democracy, when people are equal, And immediately, it was like a flashback. I recalled how Putin behaves towards his subordinates. Probably saw this picture when Putin is sitting at the table, a long table, 30 meters table. With his, let's say, Minister of Defense, other top officials. So Putin is always keeping a distance with his subordinates, while President Biden always very warm to other people. This is very important. And I think that these, let's say, two pictures, they represent the difference of the mentality, the difference of worlds, that Ukraine, and obviously you felt this when you were in Ukraine, that Ukraine wants to join European Union, wants to join Western world, and tries to build our democracy in Western manner. That's why, President Zelensky, he acts like President Biden. He's very friendly towards his subordinates, towards his team. It's very important. So do you think that after Putin's regime collapse in Russia, after Russian defeat in Ukraine, do you think that, Russia can be Westernized, and let's say in 50, 60 years, it will be possible to see the same type of behavior between politician and, let's say, a regular warrior, regular soldier? Because now what we see in Russia is not only behave in arrogant way towards Ukraine. Russia top officials, and Putin in particular, behaves in arrogant way even towards his own people, and this is a disgusting. So do you think that it's possible to change the mentality of Russians in a long perspective?
I don't think that, first of all, Putin doesn't reflect Russia. I think that, when living in Odessa, I met a lot of Ukrainians. I met a lot of Ukrainian Russians. I even knew some Russians, and people are people, but Putin's an authoritarian, and I don't think that he reflects Russia. I don't think that he reflects his people. And I think that once he's out of office, I don't think that, I do think things will change. And I think that, I think that Ukraine will change a lot. I think Ukraine will grow for the better as a consequence of the war. I think that Ukrainians will fight a lot more for, will fight against corruption and a lot more, and will be, I think, just more, sometimes countries need something like a war to really give them that boost that they need to change and improve their lives. Because before the war, I didn't think that Ukrainians would be able to fight corruption, to the point where they would be able to join the EU. But I think now, that I really do think that it's really motivated Ukrainians to work harder at dealing with some of its internal issues. Because, and I had talked about this on the first interview that I had ever given, and when I was in Ukraine, we talked about corruption, and the interviewer asked me if I thought, what I thought about corruption in Ukraine, and I said, well, I don't think it's just the government. I even saw it in the public sector. There was a lot of corruption. And, but yeah, again, I really do think that this war really will bring out the best in Ukrainian people and the Ukrainian government. And, we're already seeing that, I think that, I think that Ukrainians are now inspiring the world. I don't see, and Ukrainians are the heroes, not America or Europe. I think, we're helping out, but, we're not in the trenches. And I think that the world is really inspired by Ukraine. I am. I'm really, really, really inspired. And I'm even proud of just having been able to become part of the Ukrainian culture, for a short time, living there. And I think it's amazing just the way that Ukrainians are fighting for their country. And I'm definitely not the only one that feels this way. I think that, again, it's very difficult for you to see this because you're in Ukraine and you're living there, and you're in the middle of a war, and it's really hard to pull yourself away from what's going on. But it's really incredible. I'm really inspired, and I was talking to a young, one of my friends, one of my former students, and I was telling him that, you should be very proud to be Ukrainian, because it's just amazing the way that even women are taken to the streets and fighting. Even kids are running up to soldiers and yelling at soldiers. And it's just, it's almost a beautiful thing. The war is horrible. It's to see all that going on, but to just see the patriotism and just the intelligence and strength of the Ukrainian people. It's beyond words. It really is. I really don't know how else to put it, because it's really amazing.
Mr. Charpentier, I totally share your point of view. Now in Ukraine, one of our famous journalists, he said, I think it was even today, that for Ukraine, it's much easier to fight Putin and to fight Russia than to fight corruption. And it's true because, our fight against Putin is so our will is so strong and our desire is so strong that I'm sure that it's possible to fight Putin and to win this war against Russia. And it is much easier for us to than to deal with corruption. Mr. Charpentier, I think very important question is about attitudes which we have to now choose towards Russian people. Yeah, because you understand that Russia is sheltering bombs over Ukraine. Russia destroyed several cities, Mariupol, Izum city, Kharkiv city, other cities were destroyed. Many people were internally displaced in other regions. Many people became refugees in Europe. Even President Biden announced a plan to accept 100,000 refugees from Ukraine because of this crisis. And obviously, we are talking about almost all Ukrainian families who suffered in one way or another from Russian aggression. So obviously, all conflicts and all wars, they end up in peace. And we will have a peace agreement with Russia. I hope on Ukrainian conditions, and I'm sure on Ukrainian conditions. But even though we will reach an agreement with Russia, still you understand that Russia brought a very serious pain to Ukraine. Many people died in Ukraine. So I would like to ask you a question. How Ukrainians have to call this conflict, have to call this war? Is it a Putin's war, or this is a Russian war against Ukraine? I understand some journalists' argument that majority of people supports Putin, according to the polls which were conducted recently. But as Mark Twain used to say, there are lie, damn lying statistics. So you never know what society thinks in totalitarian regime. I hope that majority of Russians, they opposed Russian intervention into Ukraine, which Putin conducted. So my question will be, I would like to emphasize it. Shall we call this intervention a Putin intervention, a Russian state intervention, but not a Russian people intervention? Because there are many Russians who support Ukraine, who come to fight against Putin in Ukraine, who help refugees. So there are different Russians. Some of Russians, they stood against Russian aggression from the beginning. So what do you think? Shall we call this war a Putin's aggression or a Russian people aggression?
I would say a Putin, that's state aggression, because it's extremely difficult and like impossible to really know how many Russians are truly against Putin, right? Because there are all these laws in place where the people can't even speak out, right?
Yeah.
But again, I met, living in Odessa. Odessa's a it's really a city of where I lived and where you are in Odessa. It's a place where there are many different kinds of people, and there were a lot of Russians in Odessa. There were a lot of Ukrainians. There were a lot of there were obviously Ukrainians from different parts of Ukraine. You had there are Muslims. Muslims and Jews get along in Odessa like I've never seen before in the world. And I think that, when you're talking about people, you have to talk about people. And, I think even, and not, blame the people, always, especially with an authoritarian government, right? If it's a democratic country, then, you could blame the people. But I just think that, again, what I experienced in Odessa was very beautiful with all those different cultures. And I know that a lot of Russians or Russian Ukrainians in Odessa oppose the war and the invasion. And I think that there are a lot of Russians that are against the Russian invasion, because I think that generally Russian people, and I'm speaking of the people, I'm not speaking of the ones that support the, talking about the Russians that don't support the Russian invasion. I think that they're generally just decent people like you and me, like any Ukrainian or any American. And, I have Russian friends. I have Ukrainian friends. And I think any decent person would just oppose what this authoritarian is doing. And
Mr. Charpentier, I would like to ask you the final question in this interview, and I think this is a question very, very important, extremely important. Western experts suggest that Russia is going to try a chemical weapon in Ukraine. And you know that the chemical weapon in Ukraine, which Russia can, let's say, try to use, will be a disaster. And you know that Putin, he is ruling his country for about 25 years. And now he really, he don't have any advisors, and he don't have any people around him who can stop him and prevent him using chemical weapon in Ukraine. This is very serious. And obviously, it is very important for the Western politicians to act now before Putin is going to use chemical weapon than afterwards. I remember 1 month ago, and that I was among those experts who thought that Russia won't start the war. And actually, you were the one who told me before that Russia is going to launch a big war with Ukraine. I didn't believe this, and I didn't believe the words of Western and the American experts who suggested that Russia is going to start this war. I didn't believe this. I thought that Putin wouldn't do this, because this is a tragedy, what is Putin doing, not only for Ukraine, but for Russia as well. And I remember 1 month before the war, our President Zelensky, gave an interview to the Washington Post where he stipulated, wait a second, I try to, cite his words, wait a second, why you do not adopt sanctions, harsh sanctions against Russia now? Because in this case, Russia would feel the costs and would feel so serious damage, then Russia wouldn't go to war against Ukraine. And we now see that Russia, after Russia started its war against Ukraine, and after before US and Europe adopted sanctions against the Russian central bank by freezing all Russian assets. We see that a Russian elite feels this pain, but unfortunately the war is underway. You can't stop the war by imposing sanctions, because sanctions have long complications. Maybe it was a wrong policy from the point of West to adopt sanctions after Putin started the war, not before Putin started the war. So my question will be, why Western politicians are so reluctant to adopt now even more sanctions towards Russia before Russia uses chemical weapon? Because if Russia is going to use chemical weapon, then all people who would die from this chemical weapon, they will be dead partially because of Western reluctance to adopt quick, necessary measures.
I just think that Putin is extremely, really unpredictable. He definitely planned this war. If he is going to use chemical weapons or nuclear weapons, then he planned it. But also, I think that what really frustrates Putin is that he wasn't able to take Ukraine in 3 days as he thought. And as
you're right. Yeah,
I think as the Ukrainians just keep getting, I think that as long as Ukrainians fight the way that they're fighting and really resist him, I think that things are definitely going to just really get worse in a lot of ways, because he's lost face already in the world. And I think he really despises President Zelensky too. And I think that I think just him seeing Zelensky in the news and being embraced by the West, I think that it really drives him crazy. I think that he's really, so I think that he planned the war. He planned on doing, he planned it in a certain way, but I think because it didn't go the way he planned, that I think that things could turn out in a different way. And it's possible that he could use chemical weapons or nuclear weapons. It's possible. And the West has already warned him that if he does, there'll be really serious repercussions. And I think that that could change things. It could change things in the war. And the West might, but I don't think that they'll do anything before that happens. No, I don't. I really don't think so. It's unfortunate that a lot of people will have to die before, the West does a lot more.
Mr. Charpentier, thank you very much for condemning this procrastination from the, West. I agree with you, and as always, I would like to express my sincere gratitude for your time, for your efforts, for your attitude towards Ukraine, for your support, and thank you very much. And I hope that we will continue our tradition to have an interview on a weekly basis to discuss points which are and issues which are relevant to both Ukraine and the US public. And I hope that this interview will be received by Ukrainian and American public. Thank you very much, Mr. Aaron Charpentier.
Thank you. Yeah, it's my honor. It's my honor to just even playing a very small part in supporting the Ukrainian people. But I really feel honored and again truly inspired by by Ukraine, by Ukrainians. But so
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Dear audience, thank you very much for seeing us. So we will see each other tomorrow. Thank you very much.